When the Occupy movement speaks about the 1%, which has wreaked havoc on this country's financial system, the billionaire Koch brothers immediately come to mind. Charles and David Koch have given almost $100 million to fund a conservative agenda which promotes the interests of the richest 1% of Americans. Now, in Robert Greenwald's new documentary, Koch Brothers Exposed, the 1% at its very worst, we get an incisive look at the tentacles of the Koch's influence throughout the American political and cultural landscape. After inheriting the family oil business from their father, Charles and David Koch amassed an estimated fortune of $60 billion through Koch Industries. The company has become the second largest privately held multinational corporation in the world. Veteran filmmaker Robert Greenwald, in his documentary, shows how the Koch brothers have spent their money to wield enormous power and advance an extreme right-wing political agenda through massive donations to think tanks, legislators, and political groups like Americans for Prosperity. Robert Greenwald is the producer and the director of Koch Brothers Exposed. He's also the founder of Brave New Films. He now joins me on the phone. Welcome to Uprising, Robert.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Thanks so much for joining us. Well, this documentary is very interesting because it sheds light on a couple of men who are only just now, say in the past year, being known throughout progressive circles and in parts of the country who had never before heard of the Koch brothers. Was that your intention to make this documentary, to make these two men widely known?
Well, definitely. It's a very troubling and powerful story, and the team that's been researching it at Brave New Foundation, it's been over a year now we've been on this. You know, we come up with incident after incident. You don't want to be conspiracy theorists, but you look at so many different areas, as you named, Sonali, and there they are, and they're willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars regularly, whether it is for resegregating, or one of the most devastating sequences in the film is the small town in Arkansas, African-American town, where people literally are dying of cancer from one of the Koch enterprises. They have over 100 different companies they own. And what we tried to do with the film is put a face on ideology. You know, all too often the discussions become abstract, but it comes down to human beings. It comes down to these people in Arkansas. It comes down to college students who are being hurt and affected. It comes down to individuals in a town where their Kochs are working to resegregate the schools. And that's where the power of film is, in those personal stories. And that's where, you know, we're telling the story. And most importantly, we have over 40 groups working with us. And, of course, you and all your listeners who were able to get the film at KochBrothersExposed.com and then do screenings, do house parties, bring it to schools or churches or unions. You know, there's so many different ways that we can use these tools.
Well, one of the things that really surprised me that I didn't know before, Robert, was the history of the Koch family, a sordid history. Tell us about the origins of this family and how they got their start in the first place. How did they manage to amass such a fortune?
Well, like all too often in the 1%, they are, you know, among the worst of the 1%. They had a daddy, and their dad made some money. He made it, ironically, with a lot of the money was made going to the Soviet Union under Stalin, using his beginning business in oil and gas, coming back here then and joining the John Birch Society. So the sons have been trained in this extreme right ideology.
So the John Birch Society, which is an extremely racist organization.
Awful.
So we're not even just talking about economic dominance here. We're talking about an extreme right-wing agenda that also pushes a white supremacy ideology.
Yes, very, very much so. And very, you know, the important point is, you know, again, it's one of the things we tried hard to do in the film, Sonali. We talk about ideology, and it tends to become an intellectual discussion. But damn it, there are individual lives at stake, many lives, many people who are paying a price for that ideology, whether it be the racist aspects of it, whether it be the economic aspects of it, whether it be the social aspects of it, whether it be the health aspects of it. And a lot of these sections we have as individual sections, so people can also, you know, get the film and then use the individual sections to reach an audience. The environmental, Wisconsin, we have an interview with the guy who pranked Scott Walker.
Mm-hmm. Pretending to be one of the Koch brothers, right?
Exactly, and he does a wonderful little imitation, and he tells the story of how he got the governor on the phone because he thought he was a Koch brother. Can you imagine any other person in the state or in the country trying to get the governor on the phone?
Well, let's talk about some of the issues. I want to play an excerpt from your film, Koch Brothers Exposed. Near the beginning of your film, you exposed the echo chamber that the Koch brothers create through their variously funded think tanks and also the political campaign contributions, particularly on the issue of Social Security and raising the age at which Americans can retire. In this excerpt, we'll also hear the voice of Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders.
Raising the retirement age.
I would increase the retirement age.
So we'll probably have to increase the retirement age.
We're probably going to have to raise the retirement age.
And people will not know they represent an organization which is heavily funded by corporate interests. They are very effective in getting their positions out into the media.
Should Congress raise the retirement age?
If you raise the retirement age.
Well, raise the retirement age.
Let's consider the options. Let's raise the age.
Raising the retirement age to 69.
At the same time, the Koch brothers are putting huge amounts of money into campaign contributions.
Very modest increases in the retirement age.
And eventually getting the retirement age to 70 is a step that needs to be taken.
The age on Social Security will have to go up.
So you have an echo chamber which starts repeating a lot of misinformation.
Now, Robert Greenwald, this clip is focusing primarily on raising the Social Security retirement age, but this is an example of so many these sort of statements that get made in right-wing media and even mainstream media that get echoed by politicians. It seems as though it's a perfect example, though, of something that happens all the time on all sorts of issues.
Yes, and I'm so glad you played that clip, Sonali, because I think it's among the most important sections of the film. Again, we talk about echo chamber. Well, what does an echo chamber mean? We spent literally one person, Natalie worked on this, and Layla, actually two people, for about 3 months, and they went back to the think tanks that the Kochs fund. They found over 250 different reports funded by the Kochs through the think tanks, all of them attacking Social Security. Then they went through those reports and they found the language, raise the retirement age, Social Security is bankrupt, things that we've heard over and over again. That language began in those reports in the think tanks. We show that. Then it was fed to their grassroots groups, Americans for Prosperity. You see them yelling, screaming, shouting about it. Then you see it picked up by the pundits. Then you see it picked up by the elected officials who they pay for. So it's a perfect example of what it means to have a multifaceted echo chamber funded by the Kochs at every step along the way. And it's an important lesson in how it works and how we have to use our resources to fight back. We'll never have their money, but we do have all kinds of people, including, many listeners to your show who's been incredible in getting the word out when we're able to provide these tools.
And actually, one of the very incredible stories in the film Koch Brothers Exposed is the Wake County, North Carolina story of how a public school system that was very diverse and very successful, among one of the more successful public school systems in the country, was taken over, the school board taken over by Koch-funded folks who essentially tried to stop the busing of poor and minority children by using the same terms, neighborhood schools and forced busing, that were used to justify segregation in the South several decades ago. But what was amazing in the documentary is that despite this huge funding that these people on the school board got from the Koch brothers, the community won in the end. So, was that your intention, to show that people can fight back and do fight back and win?
Absolutely, and there have been a series of victories. There was North Carolina, there was the tar sands fight where the Kochs would be one of the big beneficiaries. There was a recent victory down in Florida. One of the schools that the Kochs pay a lot of money to voted to have a situation where the Kochs would have to become transparent with the giving of the money. So yes, I mean, by no means is it a hopeless situation, and it's actually very encouraging with all the money. And in North Carolina, they funded Americans for Prosperity, who spent a lot of money and a lot of time and energy talking about the basic ideas in code of forced busing and neighborhood schools, laying the groundwork for the election. But fortunately, our film was able to be used by people in the community to educate themselves around the fundamental issues. And it's really, that story is particularly infuriating and important. We went on location. We interviewed people, black and white, local residents. They loved that school. It was a terrific school. It was functioning well, and literally outsiders coming in through Americans for Prosperity, spending all kinds of money, saying, no, this isn't working. You have to change it.
You feature a number of folks such as Bill McKibben, Jim Hightower, John Nichols, Katrina vanden Heuvel, Bernie Sanders, whom we heard earlier in the film, Adele Stan, a frequent guest here on Uprising. And it's quite interesting to see this burgeoning movement now making the links to what to some of the right-wing ideology and to the funders of this right-wing ideology, the Koch brothers. Finally, Robert Greenwald, what do you hope for people to do with this film? Earlier, you said that people can purchase the film at KochBrothersExposed.com and then hold house parties. So you're encouraging people to screen this in any context that they want. Can they hold public screenings as well?
Yes, they can do everything and anything with it. But, it's the three key words: organize, organize, and then organize. The film is available to be used in that way. With the different films, you and the audiences have found all kinds of ways to use them, screen them, schools, churches, homes, unions. There's all kinds of opportunities, and now the people are aware of the Kochs, and it's very important to use the film and connect the dots. This is systemic. This is not bad apples. This is, some of the 1%. There are others, how they're using the system, how they're using their power, their money, and how they are oppressing the other 99% and really taking the few remaining rules off capitalism and having it run wild.
So Koch Brothers Exposed is the name of the documentary, and unlike most documentary films, there are no restrictions on the screening. People can get the film again at KochBrothersExposed.com. Robert Greenwald, it's always a pleasure to have you on. I'm excited to hear what your next project will be. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for all your good work.
Thank you, and thanks for all the listeners who've been just extraordinary through the years in helping make the films into something where they're really impactful.